What if, at this very moment, while you're watching this video, something else is also watching you? Think about it for a second. It's not just about watching an animation, it's not just entertainment. It's about perception, about awareness, and about that strange feeling that reality might not be exactly what it seems. Have you ever experienced that? That quick, almost imperceptible impression that something went wrong. A strange déjà vu, a slight delay in perception, as if time had frozen for a millisecond. Now imagine this amplified. Imagine living in a world where these reality glitches are not only rare, but begin to repeat themselves. Where time seems broken, where moments overlap, and where what you see may not be all that exists. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. There's a concept that runs through philosophy, science, and even deeper psychological animations: the observer paradox. In simple terms, it's the idea that by observing something, you alter what is being observed. But here's the question that really bothers me. What if the observer themselves is also being observed? It seems like just a play on words. Until it isn't anymore. Imagine a simple scene. Someone sitting in front of a screen, watching something perhaps just like you are right now. Everything seems normal. But then, for a moment, the image glitches. A frame repeats. A movement happens twice. A small glitch, almost imperceptibly. Easy to ignore. But what if it isn't? What if these mistakes are warning signs? In animation, this type of visual distortion might seem like just a stylistic choice, an artistic effect. But when we bring it into the narrative, and into the mind, everything changes. Because then we're no longer just talking about image, we're talking about perception, about how the brain interprets reality. And the brain, as you may have already suspected, isn't exactly reliable all the time. It fills in gaps, creates continuity where there is none, organizes chaos into something that makes sense. But when something escapes this control, when flaws, glitches, appear, that's when things start to get really interesting and disturbing. Now think about it. If you can spot a mistake in reality, who is noticing that mistake, and you? Or is it something about you? This is the part where everything starts to unravel. Because, the moment you observe your own thoughts, your own perceptions, you cease to be merely the observer, you also become the observed. And this is where the paradox comes to life. In a mysterious and psychological animation, this type of concept isn't just told, it's felt, through strange cuts, subtle repetitions, time loops, and small breaks that seem out of place. Everything starts slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a flaw you try to ignore, but the more you observe, the more those flaws observe you back. And perhaps, just perhaps, the question is no longer what is happening, but rather, who is really in control of perception? Because when reality starts to fail, when time seems broken, when glitches cease to be details and become part of the experience, that's where the line between observer and observed begins to disappear. And what comes next will take you even deeper into this distortion. Prayer. And the deeper you delve into it, the harder it becomes to ignore that strange feeling that maybe you've been exactly at this point before. Hearing these same words, following this same line of thought, as if time were folding back on itself. Perhaps you're starting to notice patterns. Small details that previously went unnoticed. Maybe some part of all this is bothering you. Or perhaps intriguing you in a way that's hard to even explain. And that's precisely why I want to hear from you. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Has something similar ever happened to you? A moment when reality seemed to fail, even if just for an instant. Because when you share this, you're not just commenting on a video. You're helping to build a larger conversation, where other people also begin to realize that they are not alone in these experiences. And that changes everything. Your participation here is what keeps this type of content alive. Every comment, every like, every person who decides to subscribe. It's like a way of saying, keep going, as if you were, in a way, influencing what comes next, almost like an observer who also interferes in the reality being created here. Do you see how this connects? So, if you want to continue exploring these ideas, these paradoxes, these stories that play with perception and blur the lines between reality and imagination, subscribe to the channel. Because what we're building here goes deeper and deeper. And when you like this video, you help this message reach more people who may also be starting to question what is real and what only seems to be. Ultimately, maybe you're not just watching. Perhaps you're already a part of all this. And what comes next might make that even more evident. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what seems like just a curious idea begins to touch on something much more serious: the way you make decisions, build your mindset, and interpret your own truth. When we talk about the observer paradox, we're not just talking about philosophy or psychological animation. We're talking about the inner workings of your perception, about what shapes every choice you make without you even realizing it. Because, ultimately, observing is not a neutral act. Observing is interfering. Think about your own journey. How many times have you changed your behavior simply because you realized you were being watched? What if I told you that this happens all the time, even when no one is around? There's a kind of inner observer, a consciousness that analyzes, judges, interprets, and directly influences the course of your decisions. But this is where things start to get really intriguing. If there's a part of you that observes, then who's in control? Who's behind that layer? Is there a deeper level? A hidden truth that usually goes unnoticed? These aren't just abstract questions. They have a direct impact on how you perceive reality. Because the moment you start questioning who is observing, you initiate a transformation. A silent change in the way you perceive the world, as if you were beginning to see flaws that were previously invisible. And perhaps those flaws were always there. Perhaps glitches are not just errors, but signs. Signs that there is something beyond what you have always believed to be real. Now, imagine this within a narrative where time doesn't follow a straight line, where events repeat themselves, but never in the same way, where small alterations create new interpretations, new possibilities, almost as if reality were being rewritten with each observation. And the more you realize this, the harder it becomes to go back. Because once you start to see something, you can't simply unsee it. It's like accessing a different level of one's own consciousness. And perhaps that's exactly where everything starts to change. In a way that isn't entirely clear yet, but that is already beginning to leave its mark on how you feel, think, and react. Comment below. Does this make sense to me? In the now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because this is where the theory begins to move from the realm of ideas into experience. It's no longer just about understanding the paradox. It's about feeling when reality takes that strange, almost imperceptible, but sufficient little leap to generate doubt. Imagine a simple situation, part of your routine. You're looking at something ordinary, maybe a screen, maybe a random scene from your day. Everything seems normal. Until it doesn't anymore. A movement happens slightly out of sync. A detail repeats itself. A sound seems to precede the action that should cause it. It's subtle, almost disposable, but it leaves a trace. And that trail is what matters. Because it's at this point that your mind starts working behind the scenes, trying to reorganize what it saw, trying to fit it into a logical framework that makes sense. Except that not everything fits. And when it doesn't fit, doubt arises. Was it just my imagination, or perhaps you just noticed something that normally goes unnoticed? This is the beginning of a breakdown. Small, almost invisible, but with a profound impact. Because it shakes your confidence in what you perceive as real. And when that confidence begins to falter, your decisions change, your mindset adapts, and a new way of seeing things begins to emerge. It's as if you had access to a different layer of reality. A layer where the details aren't as stable as they seem. Where small distortions reveal that there's something beyond the surface. And perhaps the most curious thing is this. The more attention you pay, the more these glitches seem to happen. Coincidence, or some kind of answer. Perhaps reality itself is reacting to the fact that it is being observed. Or perhaps there is something more behind it, something that is not yet fully clear, but that is beginning to manifest itself in these small errors. What if these moments aren't failures, but signs? Signs that there is a larger structure, a hidden logic operating behind all of this, influencing your journey in ways you are only beginning to perceive. Because the moment you notice the break, you're no longer in the same place you were before. Write this down. I'm starting to notice Ebert. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because to truly understand what's happening, we need to bring it down to something simple, direct, almost every day. The way you see the world isn't a faithful copy of reality. It's an interpretation, a construction that happens behind the scenes in your mind. Based on everything you've experienced, your decisions, your mindset, and how you've learned to make sense of things. Your brain is constantly filtering information, cutting out excess, filling in gaps. It creates continuity where perhaps only fragments exist. It organizes chaos to give you a sense of control, and that's essential for living. But it also hides an important truth. You don't see reality as it is. You see it as you are able to process it, and that changes everything. Because when a glitch appears, when something deviates from that pattern, it's not just the image that fails. It's the entire system of interpretation. It's as if, for a moment, you have access to a less edited version of reality. And that has an impact. A silent impact, but enough to generate doubt, curiosity, and sometimes even a certain discomfort. Have you ever noticed how, in those moments, your mind quickly tries to correct what happened, as if it wanted to protect a stable narrative? This happens because there's an almost automatic need to keep everything coherent. But what if that coherence is, in fact, a well-constructed illusion? Perhaps what you call normal is just the result of a constant process of invisible adjustments, and when these adjustments fail, small revelations begin to emerge. Revelations that don't appear clearly at first, but accumulate throughout your journey, gradually changing how you perceive, feel, and react. It's a silent transformation, almost imperceptible at the beginning, but one that can lead to a completely different level of consciousness. And the more you understand this, the more you begin to realize that reality is not something fixed. It responds, adapts, and reorganizes itself according to how it is observed. Which leads to an inevitable question. If everything depends on how you perceive it, to what extent are you really in control of it? Comment below. My mind is open. Yes, now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because from here on out, that subtle feeling begins to take shape. It's no longer just an odd detail or a passing doubt. It's as if something is actually trying to get your attention. At first, it's the little things. A reflection that doesn't quite match the movement. A sound that seems out of place. A shadow that appears where it shouldn't be. Nothing explicit enough to prove anything, but enough to bother you. And the most curious thing is that the more you notice, the more these signs start to appear. It's as if your own perception is being adjusted or tested, and this directly affects your mindset. Because there comes a point where ignoring it is no longer so simple. Your mind starts revisiting moments, trying to find patterns, searching for a logic behind it all. But the more you look for answers, the more new questions arise. What if it's not a coincidence? What if there is an intention behind these distortions? This is where the tension builds, because the idea of being watched ceases to be abstract and begins to seem possible, not in an obvious way, but as a subtle, almost invisible presence that manifests itself behind the scenes of your reality. And perhaps what is most disturbing is not the presence itself, but the impact it has. Your decisions begin to change. Small behaviors alter. You start paying attention to things you previously ignored, as if you were being influenced by something you can't fully see, but can feel. And this creates a rupture between what you always believed to be control, and the possibility that this control was never entirely yours. The hidden truth begins to insinuate itself not as a clear answer, but as a persistent feeling, a kind of silent warning that there is more going on than what is on the surface. And the deeper you delve into this journey, the more you realize that perhaps you're not just observing these changes, perhaps you are being led to them. Comment below. There's something strange about Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely here that everything ceases to be just a feeling and begins to become an experience. The idea of being watched is no longer just a distant hypothesis. It begins to manifest itself in ways that you can no longer ignore. Imagine realizing that that gaze doesn't come from outside, but from within the very reality you're living. As if there were a layer beyond your perception, following every movement, every decision, every change in your mindset. And the most unsettling thing isn't that it happens. It's when you realize it's been happening for a long time. But now, you see. And once you see it, there's no going back to the starting point. It's as if two versions begin to coexist. The one that lives normally, going with the flow, making automatic decisions. And the one that observes all this happening, in silence, analyzing, questioning, trying to understand the hidden truth behind each detail. And, little by little, these two layers begin to overlap. You observe yourself reacting. You observe yourself thinking. You observe yourself trying to maintain control. But who's in control? This is the turning point, because the moment you realize you're observing yourself, a new question arises. Is there something observing this observing version of yourself? A kind of cycle, a self-reinforcing loop of consciousness, creating a feeling of infinite depth. And this isn't just theory. It has a direct impact on your journey. Because every time you notice this cycle, something changes. Small, almost imperceptible, but enough to alter the way you see reality. As if new revelations were being released, little by little, behind the scenes of your own perception. And perhaps that's the real glitch. Not in the image, but in the conscience. Because when the observer becomes the observed, the entire structure begins to crumble, and what once seemed solid begins to reveal small flaws, as if it were being rewritten in real time. And the more you try to understand, the more this cycle seems to expand. Comment below. Who's watching? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when this cycle begins to repeat itself, something even stranger happens. Time ceases to seem linear. What once followed a logical sequence, beginning, middle, and end, begins to exhibit small distortions, as if the timeline were being edited behind the scenes. Have you ever had the feeling of reliving the same moment twice, but with a different detail? As if a choice had been adjusted, as if a word had changed, as if a reaction had been recalculated. At first, it seems like just a memory lapse. But when it happens more than once, it starts to have a different impact. Because it's not just a memory, it's an experience. And that's where the loops come in. Situations that repeat themselves. Conversations that seem all too familiar. Decisions that feel like they've been made before, but never exactly the same. Always with slight variations. Almost as if each repetition were a new attempt to reach a specific result. But who is trying? That's the question that's starting to resonate. Because when time seems broken, your mindset also needs to adapt. You start to notice patterns, to question your own choices, to realize that perhaps your journey isn't following a fixed path, but rather multiple possibilities being tested, one after the other. And this reveals something unsettling. Perhaps time is not a line, but a cycle where each decision generates a new branch, a new version, a new layer of reality being constantly built and adjusted, as if there were an invisible system operating behind the scenes, recalculating, reorganizing, refining every detail. And the more you realize this, the more the loops seem to intensify. Small flaws accumulate. moments overlap, the sense of continuity begins to fragment, giving way to something more complex and harder to ignore. Because when you start to recognize the pattern, you're no longer just inside it. You are interacting with him, and perhaps that's exactly what triggers the next revelations. Something that isn't entirely clear yet, but that's already beginning to take shape in the subtext of your perception. Comment below, I've already experienced this. Arrest. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when loops cease to be subtle, glitches also evolve. What was once almost imperceptible begins to gain strength, intensity, presence. It's no longer possible to ignore or easily rationalize it. The flaws are evident. The image shatters, the sound distorts, movements don't follow a natural logic. It's as if the very structure of reality is under pressure, revealing cracks that were hidden behind the scenes all along. And the most impactful thing isn't just seeing it happen, it's feeling it. To feel that something is not right on a deeper level, your mind tries to keep up, tries to organize, tries to maintain control. But the more you try to understand, the more everything seems to slip away. As if each attempt at explanation opens up space for new doubts, new distortions, new revelations. And that's where the critical point comes in. When it's no longer just the environment that fails, but your own perception. You begin to question your decisions in real time. What seemed clear seconds ago is no longer so certain. Thoughts overlap, ideas repeat themselves with slight alterations, as if your consciousness were being traversed by multiple layers at the same time. And this has a direct impact on your journey, because at that level, it's no longer about understanding what is real, it's about sustaining the very notion of reality. It's as if you're facing a hidden truth that cannot be fully understood, only felt, fragmented, distorted, and perhaps this is the pinnacle of the glitch, not when reality fails. But then you realize that it was never entirely stable, and the more you observe these flaws, the more they seem to respond to your presence, as if there were an interaction happening there, something dynamic, alive, reacting to the way you perceive it, and that raises a disturbing possibility. What if these glitches aren't just side effects, but signs of something trying to communicate? Something that hasn't fully revealed itself yet, but has already begun to seep across the surface of your perception. Comment below, this doesn't seem normal anymore. Just now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after all this, the question is no longer about what is happening around you, but about what is happening inside you. Because amidst so many distortions, loops, and glitches, there's a silent point that remains. Observing, it doesn't react urgently, doesn't try to correct, doesn't engage in conflict. It simply observes, and the more you perceive this point, the more a different feeling begins to emerge, almost as if this were the most real part of it all. But then comes the impact. If you can observe your own thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, then who are you really in this equation? Are you the ever-changing flow of ideas, or are you what remains while everything else changes? This reflection isn't just philosophical. It directly touches your journey, your decisions, the way you build your mindset. Because when you begin to identify with the observer, something changes. There's a subtle, yet profound, transformation in how you deal with reality. Situations that once seemed solid begin to lose strength. Automatic reactions begin to slow down, as if you were gradually accessing a more conscious level, more present, more attentive to the inner workings of your own experience. And perhaps that's exactly what those glitches were revealing all along. Not just external flaws, but internal paths as well. Paths that lead to a hidden truth that cannot be directly explained, only experienced, felt in small moments of pause. In the instance when everything seems to slow down and you realize you are there, conscious of being conscious. And that changes the impact of everything. Because from that point on, reality ceases to be merely something that happens to you, and becomes something that reveals itself through you. As if each experience were, in fact, an opportunity to see deeper. And maybe, just maybe, this is the biggest turning point of all. Write this down. I'm aware, yes, now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when you reach this point, the feeling is no longer just one of discovery, it's one of involvement, as if you weren't just understanding this different reality, but actively participating in it. Notice how it all started with a simple observation, a detail out of place, a small glitch, an almost negligible doubt. And now, it seems that this has evolved into something much bigger, as if each step of this journey had been guided, revealing layers that were hidden behind the scenes of your own perception. And here's something even more intriguing. What if, all this time, it wasn't just you trying to understand reality, but reality itself trying to understand you? Think about it. Every reaction you make, every decision, every change in your mindset, all of that generates an impact. As if there were a constant exchange, a kind of silent dialogue between what you perceive and what responds to your perception. And perhaps that's the part that goes most unnoticed, because as you observe, something also adjusts. As you question, something reacts. And the deeper you go, the more evident this interaction becomes, almost as if there were a presence accompanying every step of this journey. Not directly, not clearly, but enough to leave a lingering feeling, the feeling that this doesn't end here, that this experience is not limited to this moment, nor to this screen, nor to this story, because, ultimately, the biggest revelation might not be about what's happening, but about the fact that you noticed. And when you realize it, something else also realizes that it has been noticed. And it is precisely at this point that everything seems to expand again, making room for something that has not yet fully revealed itself, but which has already begun to manifest itself in ways that you may only understand. When you look again, comment below, "I felt this," and if you've made it this far, it probably wasn't by chance. Perhaps some part of this conversation made more sense than you expected, as if, on some level, it was already inside you, just waiting to be perceived. And that's exactly why this type of content continues to exist. Because each person who follows along to the end isn't just watching, they're participating in this construction, this exchange, this journey of perception. If you want to continue exploring these ideas, these paradoxes, these deeper layers of reality and the mind, subscribing to the channel is like keeping that door open, because what's coming next continues along the same lines, always pulling a little deeper. And if at any point in this video something touched you, even subtly, leave a like, not just as a gesture, but as a sign that this connection truly happened. Now, there's something I want to propose to you. If you stayed until the end, comment here, "I'm with you until the end," just to mark this moment, as if it were a point of awareness within all of this. And before you leave, there's a video here that perfectly complements this idea, taking this reflection even further. Click on it and continue with me there. Because, as you've already realized, this journey is far from over.